Добрый день. Добрый день. Сейчас мы настроим микрофоны, потому что у нас достаточно сильно.
Good afternoon. We will adjust our microphones because we hear the sound from the other room. Good afternoon, dear delegates, dear colleagues of the Global Entrepreneurial Congress. I'm thankful to you, to those of you who came to attend to our panel discussion. I encourage this interest for the entrepreneurial education. And I should like to share a secret with you. I see too many people. Not everybody could get a chair. And we had a similar story with the speakers. Those who wished to speak in this room were 3 times more that we could accommodate. And probably it is a good news. I wanted to share with you that every year we are organizing a conference within the Global Entrepreneurial Week. We are organizing it in November, and during the whole day we dedicate to this topic, and we would like to invite the speakers who will speak today. We have like a dream team today, like a star team, and we will be able to invite all those who failed to attend this conference today due to the different reasons, and to take part in this short discussion because we have only 90 minutes. 2 words about myself. I'm Victor Sedov, and I am in charge of the Entrepreneurial Center. Our main mission is to accelerate the entrepreneurship in Russia. We work in all areas of acceleration, and in particular, we are an official host of the Global Entrepreneurial Week. And thanks to our efforts and initiative today, we are having this Congress. And probably you've heard during the plenary session, Jonathan Osborne thanked me for our role in this process. And of course, we cannot deal with the development of entrepreneurship in Russia without working with the high school. We have many programs for the entrepreneurs who are on the way to their success, but at the same time, we have a number of very many programs and projects for the young entrepreneurs and for the education of entrepreneurship in the high school. That is why I was offered to moderate this discussion, and I'm thankful for this to the organizers. Now I should like to shortly and briefly introduce our dream team. Very shortly, because you will be able to find this information on the website. We don't want to waste time. It's better for you to listen to them and who are they, and they are remarkable biographies, their achievements in business and the academic life and the university life. You will find this data on the website. And we will have a kind of a format of our work. I will introduce our speakers, then they will speak for about 7 minutes, and I should like the speakers to stick to the timetable, and then I will ask a number of questions, and then we will give the opportunity at the end of our panel discussion for asking questions from the audience. I know already that we have people who wish to talk. And for those who are interested in this topic, education of entrepreneurship in the high school, I should like to point out several people who are sitting in this room. We have a president of the Russia Association of the Entrepreneurship Education from Skoltech, from MT. This association exists, and we support its work. It's Mr. Yuri Rubin. He is in charge of this association. And all those who are interested in this topic, I highly recommend to you to meet with Mr. Rubin after the end of this discussion. Probably Denise, Executive Director of this association, is also present here in this room. And now very briefly about our speakers. Yelena Kadeykina arrived from Boston. Thank you very much. She came from the MIT. And Yelena.
Is it okay for the audience? You have earphones? Great. So Yelena is a serial entrepreneur with over 10 years of experience in business development, applied and analytical marketing research, as well as entrepreneurial education. Yelena serves as a judge, mentor, and lecturer at Mass Challenge, one of the world's largest accelerator programs, and is the co-founder of MIT Enterprise Forum in Russia. Currently, Yelena serves as the chapter chairman. Our second speaker is from MIT again, José Estabil, Director for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, Skoltech MIT Initiative and MIT Portugal program. You might be surprised why we have two MIT speakers, but personally I'm so much impressed by MIT achievements in building entrepreneurship culture and entrepreneurship ecosystem that I think it will be very useful for us to listen to these two outstanding speakers and to try to understand how they achieved it. If you're not familiar with the Kaufman Foundation research that happened a couple of years ago, this research demonstrates that those people who graduated from MIT and who started their companies, if combined together, their companies represent 17th economy in the world, liberally judged and conservatively judged, and more conservative, I think 13th in the world liberally and 11. Okay, fine. So definitely incredible result. And when I was talking with Professor Gershenfeld, he told me, Victor, it's because we have entrepreneurship culture. So I hope you can explain together with José what it means. Our third speaker, Lawrence Wright, on the left, co-founder and chief executive officer of LaunchGurus. Lawrence was appointed startup project director at the Moscow School of Management, Skoltech, in spring 2011. In his role, he leads the entrepreneurial, or used to lead entrepreneurial component in the full-time MBA program, and is developing strong pipeline of potential projects, fostering an entrepreneurial ecosystem, managing the startup module, and supporting new startups to be successful. Our next outstanding speaker is Galina Shirokova. Galina is from St. Petersburg University, a graduate school of management. From all the people I know in Russia, I think Galina, for me at least, is the best authority in teaching entrepreneurship. She devoted many years to that. She runs a Center for Entrepreneurship in that school. She is the author of the first textbook on entrepreneurship. She is the author of many cases with successful Russian entrepreneurs. And our final speaker, Vivek Wadhwa, is really a star. He plays outstanding role in 4 universities in the United States: Stanford, Duke, Emory, and he is Distinguished Fellow at Singularity University. He is the author of many books. Some of them became best books in America. He was named by Foreign Policy magazine as top 100 global thinker in 2012. In 2013, Time magazine listed him as one of the 40 most influential minds in tech. So it's very short to say about our speakers. If you want to learn more, go to the website. And now I open floor for your short presentations. And I want to start with Vivek because I think he can tell us how the world is changing, what we should expect in the nearest future, and why that nearest future needs more entrepreneurs than probably professional managers. Vivek.
I talked this morning about some of the advances that are happening in technology, about everything from AI, robotics, 3D printing, computing, and so on. It used to be that it would take decades for change to happen. So we have these big companies which dominate the economy right now. But with advancing technology, we're going to have entire industries being wiped out within 5 to 10 years. I mean, look at all the disruption that's already happened. For example, Kodak. Kodak is a household name. Kodak went into bankruptcy in 2012. Okay, look at the bookstores. Major bookstores have died. DVD stores, rentals have died. This is just the beginning. In this decade, we're going to have our telecommunications companies in big trouble. For example, at this conference, I have, when I used to come to Russia before, I would always have long-distance plans. I would pay $2.50 a minute to dial the United States. My cost on this trip is zero. Why? Because I'm using Skype and FaceTime on my iPhone. I'm using Wi-Fi, which means that AT&T is losing major money. What happens when you have internet everywhere? Why do you need your local telecom carrier when you have free connectivity? So we're talking about the cell phone company being disrupted. You can start going industry after industry and after industry and looking at the trend. Within 10 years, almost every major industry will be disrupted, including the petroleum industry of Russia, because of solar energy, because of alternative energies. So you're talking about everything being disrupted. Who's going to make this disruption happen? It isn't the big companies, because they're protecting their turf. It's the entrepreneurs. So, just like you saw WhatsApp, being built by a Ukrainian immigrant to the United States, the most expensive acquisition ever, $20 billion, right? In 2 years, this company came out of nowhere and started disrupting the SMS industry, disrupting social media. You're going to have more and more of those companies coming out of nowhere. It's going to be entrepreneurs that do that. Now, it used to be that all of the innovation came from America or came from Western Europe. No longer. Now you can have amazing innovations coming out of Estonia, coming out of Zimbabwe, coming out of New Delhi, coming out of Shanghai. Entrepreneurs anywhere can do it. So the question that Victor asked was, why is it important? Because we have entire industries to disrupt. This is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to change the world. And what I've been saying, my message is that we can disrupt for evil, which we can create all sorts of problems, or we can solve problems. To the extent that we have people like the ones in this room disrupting, we will do it for good. We will not do it for evil. We will not do it to rob mankind. We will do it to better mankind. This is why we need to have our children who really care about society, who really care about bettering the world, them becoming entrepreneurs, because they will do it in a good way, and they will impact humanity in a very positive way.
You did it really good within the time frame that you had. I liked very much your article about Goldman Sachs and Google, where basically you say, yeah, we need Goldman Sachs, but we need really talent in Google, and we need more Googles. But we'll come back to this theme.
I would rather say Goldman Sachs be put out of business and then 100 more Googles.
Yeah, I agree. We'll come back to this theme in our questions and answers time. Now I would like to ask Yelena Kadeykina to talk about things I've mentioned in my initial remarks about culture and ecosystem and how it is achieved in MIT and what you're planning to do to achieve similar things probably in Russia, because they have new initiatives.
It might take some time to achieve the similar things in Russia that we achieved at MIT. We have 150 years of history, which we have to remember. It takes really time. So going back to MIT, if someone asked me when I was growing up that I'm going to become an entrepreneur, I would laugh. As you know, in Russia 20 years ago, 30 years ago, being an entrepreneur wasn't popular, right? And was even shameful activity. But I think what is really important, as Victor pointed out, is a culture. And once you get into the culture that nourishes entrepreneurship, even if you were not born with entrepreneurial gene, I think you can become a very successful entrepreneur. And once you are given tools and frameworks how to build a company, you can become even better at that. So what makes MIT so successful is, I think it's an opportunity for people to express themselves, to share their knowledge, and get engaged in a number of different activities. And I'm going to talk about through the prism of being a student there around 10 years ago. And as a student, it was not only about being at the classes that taught us entrepreneurship, but all of those classes had an action-based learning aspect to them. For example, if you study introducing new energy tool in Rwanda, you don't do it in a classroom. You go to Rwanda, you spend a month there, you talk to people there, you understand if there is really a need on the market, not just our theoretical knowledge. So it's very action-based. It's very focused on interacting with your potential customer. And of course, it's not about just the classes, it's about different activities. I don't know how many of you heard about MIT 100K competition, but it's pretty popular and famous in the United States. But what is amazing about that competition, it's completely run by students. So students fundraise to run the activity, students completely organize it, and students are the one who participate in that. 100% student-driven. It's amazing. If you look at the different activities and clubs, also 100% students-driven. They raise money to invite speakers, they pick the speakers they want to invite, and they organize the processes. So what is really interesting at our university, it's more like students and faculty who come up with an ideas, and then the administration provide us with resources very effectively how to implement them in life. And then once you graduate, and why you be at the university, you understand that you really can impact the world. You're really supported by people with the similar vision, and you have this vision of that you can accomplish totally anything what you want to do. And once you graduate as an alum, you still are given tools to keep being engaged with the community. I think there are a few dozen organizations where you can stay involved as an alum, at least 10 of them somehow related to entrepreneurship. One of them is MIT Enterprise Forum. It's basically a platform connecting entrepreneurs and providing education to them. And me and a number of other MIT alums about 4 years ago wanted to open a chapter in Russia. And basically, the vision was to build a bridge between Russian and US entrepreneurial communities. So we, who were fortunate to be surrounded by people who had many years of experience building successful companies, we would help Russian entrepreneurs to get an access to those people. So that's how MIT Enterprise Forum was born. Right now, Russia keeps, and Moscow in particular, have very extensive conversation with MIT, City of Moscow, and Alexei Komissarov with his team, and a number of other people are participating in regional entrepreneurial accelerator program at MIT with 6 other countries. And we are the program called REAP, R-E-A-P. And I think what makes MIT very also good at what we do, we never stop at trying to improve how we do things. Though we produced about 27,000 companies, MIT only had an entrepreneurial, accelerator program started only 2 years ago. Just we realized that it would be really good if we combine all the knowledge we had for so many years in one place. And Bill Allet introduced an accelerator program. Bill Allet is an director of Center for Entrepreneurship. And we also keep thinking, how can we share that knowledge with as many people as we want? So we're very much into online education right now. We are starting a new project, and I really would love you to pay attention to that. It's called Global Entrepreneurial Education Bridge. We will invite 2 countries. We asked 2 countries to participate in a pilot project. I hope Russia is going to be one of them. And the idea is an idea of blended learning, where we provide some content via online education, and then we'll have a mentorship coaching basis on the ground who will help students and entrepreneurs to go through the content.
Thank you, Yelena. I would like to ask all speakers probably to speak closer to microphone because the background noise is quite significant. And I want to ask Lawrence you to talk about your incredible experience here in Russia with startups and acceleration and Skoltech and your new baby. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And when I hit 7 minutes, just wave so I don't go long. I think one of the interesting things is that entrepreneurship is, I mean, it's amazing. I'm just really amazed that there's such a huge turnout for this kind of topic, specifically entrepreneurship education. Because really, you know, when we look at why, you know, doing a startup, you know, how many of you have done a startup before? Okay, not as many. You should all go do startups to find out how hard it is. It's hard work. This is my 6th startup, and so I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm a business angel investor from time to time, and you know, looking at the reasons why startups fail, you know, if you look at the 1, 2, and 3 reasons, they're all things that you can address through education, through competency building. This is, and when I say education to startups, they kind of say like, you know, why do I need education? Just give me money. And actually, you know, because we're looking at postgraduate level of education specifically, and I think you need to create entrepreneurship at earlier levels, create awareness and intentionality. I think those are very important things that you need to do, even at the high school level. I think going to high school level and doing entrepreneurship is extremely important, should be done, should be taught in all high schools. But when you get to the postgraduate level where people are really thinking about, they have ideas, they really want to start doing businesses, then I think the format begins to change. I think you need to really make sure that you have real entrepreneurs who are serial entrepreneurs, have done many businesses, actually involved in delivering the content. And the method for applying this, which we've learned now, we've done 4 startup academies. These are 10-week programs that take you from idea to, you know, fully packaged idea, or hopefully, you know, or, you know, alternatively failed, and then moved on to your next project as quickly as possible. And we've taken 100 startups through this project, through this process. And the process actually combines, I think, I'd like to think that we have the best in practice education, formal education, in the traditional sense, combined with the best in practice from acceleration, where we're not only teaching them, but we're learning by doing in a very practical way. We're actually teaching them how to become better entrepreneurs by learning on their own startup. And by following, you know, we're big believers in customer development, and Bob Dorff will give a small plug for Bob Dorff's masterclass tomorrow. And at 11:30, and we take them through this process so that they can really start to understand that, you know, a startup isn't about a product. A startup is about a business with customers. And if you haven't got customers, then you don't have a business. And there are a lot of, but to understand that and to understand what your value proposition is, understand all these things about who your customers are, who they really are, it changes so much. You think it's simple to find out, but it's not. And the method and the process for getting all the skills that you need, not only to have a working business model, but to be able to sell, to be able to market, to understand all of the sort of the tools to go through this process, is actually takes longer than 10 weeks, to be honest. And we have people that go through the program and continue applying the method for, you know, for months and months and up to a year. And what we see as a result is we've done, so about 100 startups have gone through the program. We've seen about 30% of the students go on and go to market and do reasonably well. These aren't the next Googles, of course, although there are a couple of candidates in there, I'd say, with the potential. But this is 1 year out from the beginning, or a year and a half out from the beginning of the program. So it's quite early still. but they've already raised $5 million. They have created over 400 sustainable full-time jobs, and they have the valuation of those companies that are now growing is over $50 million. So it's it's growing every month, and the thing is that our interest, this model is different, and what I like about it is that it's aligned with the interest of the entrepreneur. We're not focusing on getting to money as an accelerator is. I don't think that's the right approach for early stage. In developing countries like in Russia, where we need to actually develop this pipeline first. And I think when we focus on making the entrepreneur better, the project follows.
Right on time, thank you.
I can go on and on. I've been used to
I know. We'll come back and you will continue. Now I'd like to open the floor for a statement to José Estabil. He is a successful entrepreneur. And he's very successful in MIT, working in the technology licensing office. And now he has a new project and new initiatives that aim to reach Russia. And definitely he has international program for Portugal. So, José, the floor is yours.
Добрый день. So I'd like to start by explaining a little bit about my background. Like you, or many of you in the audience, I started out as a scientist working in a research lab at IBM. And the beginning of my journey there led to the cell phones you have in your pocket right now. The copper wires that makes them small, in fact, are something that we worked on, and I made the first hardware. And that took me to Silicon Valley for a long time, where I made the equipment that make the chips that go into the phone. And that led me to live in Japan, in South Korea for a while, and then move back to the East Coast, where I've been with MIT now for 7 years, and have been working on the Shirokova project for almost 3. And so when I look at this, some lessons that I've learned are that innovation happens everywhere. Everywhere I've been in the world, there's innovation. And in fact, just heard one of my colleagues explain that the next disruptive technology could be in Estonia, or it could be, in somewhere like Johannesburg, whom I met an entrepreneur this morning from. And so, and what we see at MIT is that entrepreneurship is the tool that promotes innovation in its best manner. And what we see is that the entrepreneurs that we meet around the world, when placed in Kendall Square, I've seen that they're as good as the entrepreneurs that we have back in Kendall Square. But the difference is they don't get to stay there. They live here, or they live in Lisbon, or they live in Berlin, or they live in Caracas, right? And so what we see in this context of education is one where very much culture influences the outcome of what these entrepreneurs are doing. And the things that we try to teach, and like my colleague Yelena Kadeykina said, we believe entrepreneurship can be taught. As an example, 2 years ago, we had a group of about 20 students, Russian students, under the Skoltech project, spend 1 year in different universities around the world. And of the group that came to MIT, one of the students, Nikita Rodchenko, was was very good science, very good math, but within MIT, he immediately started working in entrepreneurship and became one of the leaders of the MIT 100K competition. And in fact, he went from zero knowledge, but a lot of passion and a lot of comprehension to become one of the leaders for that year. And so what we see is first curiosity, second is resilience, and we are giving a resiliency masterclass with Professor Val Levada and Dr. Ilya Dubinsky tomorrow afternoon here at the Congress. The third thing that we see is a passion for solving problems. And the last thing is that we see that these people want to help, and they get helped by advisors and other entrepreneurs that came before them. And so within MIT, this history of entrepreneurship has been a long time in the making, but not that long ago did it get institutionalized. In fact, in 1990 at MIT, there was only one entrepreneurship class. And many of the companies that were mentioned in the Kaufman report that shows about a $2 trillion contribution to GDP by MIT-founded companies predate that. And you ask yourself, well, if there are no classes, why? And again, it's the culture. What we have learned to do is how to teach entrepreneurship, and we see a few elements in that context. The first is the faculty. Like Lawrence was saying, we have academics who have disciplinary knowledge in marketing, in strategy, but we also have practitioners, people like me, who've built teams, who've built products, who co-teach along with the scholars. The second thing that we have is curricular and co-curricular activities. We believe in learning by doing. So we complement case studies and classroom exercises with activities such as our labs that either are international or in the United States, where we place students with active companies so that they can learn by doing. And the third is that we encourage and provide a lot of incentive for students to practice what they are learning. And that is through either venture formation at the university level or by joining companies and starting new products. Remember, I said entrepreneurship is one of the best forms of promoting innovation, but it's not the only form. But it is the one that works the best. And in my opinion, what I've seen is that it works very well and can be adopted elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, José. Definitely MIT is lucky to have people like you and Yelena with incredible success in your entrepreneurial careers and research. You have like 9 patents in semiconductor industry, as far as I remember. So now we have to give a floor to our final speaker, Galina Shirokova. And Galina, I think from the initial statements it's clear what we're talking about. We all believe that entrepreneurship entrepreneur can be taught, not necessarily born. Maybe you think it's not working?
No, just switch.
Galina, не волнуйся. Understanding that, and we see new initiatives in Skoltech, MIT is coming with a new program. But I think as you're in this field for many years, you are like Howard Stevenson at Harvard Business School, who started it 20 years ago. You started it in Russia, how long? 7, 10 years ago?
Just 6 years ago.
6 years ago. So I think you know the comprehensive picture of the state of teaching entrepreneurship in Russia, not only in top schools like yours or MGU or Skoltech, but what goes on in the country. Because you cannot change the landscape of the entire country if you're doing only in few top schools.
Я буду по-русски говорить. Спасибо, Виктор, за вопрос. Мы действительно в Центре предпринимательства выше.
Yes, so we are in the center of entrepreneurship at the St. Petersburg University, and to create something in Russia, we started with research. And I would like to give a few examples, factual examples taken from our researchers and European and American efforts. And first, it has been proved that there is a meaningful relationship between the level of the entrepreneurship education in the country and the level of entrepreneurship activity in the country. So over 8 years, we've been monitoring entrepreneurship in Russia as a national team. And in 2012, the entrepreneurship activity index in Russia was about 4%. It is one of the lowest among the emerging economies in the world, and it's actually not enough. For Russia, certainly only 4% of the adult adult population of the country arrives at entrepreneurship or owners of young business at not older than 3 years. And this is a very important key index that shows the entrepreneurial activity in the country. So the key barriers for entrepreneurship is considered to be a fear of a failure and then lacking knowledge expertise in entrepreneurship as seen by our Russian population. The second, research on the entrepreneurial spirit in students. It was started in 2012 and it was continued in 2013, showed that despite the results of the global monitoring of the entrepreneurship, our Russian undergraduates who participated in this research this year, and there were 35 universities and 4.5 thousand of students. And they said that just after graduation, about 9% and in the last year and 11% next year would like to become entrepreneurs and founders of their own business. And then 5 years of their graduation, 53% of Russian universities have a desire to become an entrepreneur. So if we base on these facts, because these are the results of the researches, we have a great demand for entrepreneurship education.
And secondly, our research demonstrated that conditionally we can split all our universities in Russia into the 4 categories. Again, I'm talking about the conditional splitting because our research did not involve and embrace all the universities. In 2013, we repeated this project and we confirmed our data. 50% of the participants of our research, students replied that they didn't have any entrepreneurial course at all, any entrepreneurial program at all, or maybe they did have some programs for the risk management, for the evaluation of the business, but they didn't have any entrepreneurial programs. 20% replied that they could select either a compulsory entrepreneurial course, but they mentioned a very low level of quality of teaching them the entrepreneurial skills and a very low level of the mindset towards the entrepreneurship. And another 20% replied that in their universities, they do have not only the education of entrepreneurship, but they also have a scientific research in the format of a center or a chair. But unfortunately, we have less than 20% of these universities. And the highest level, we've discovered and revealed about only 10%. Again, there is a kind of a bias in our selection because those universities participate in our research who wanted to understand what's happening with their entrepreneurial education. But most of them are universities based in the capital, and they developed a program of entrepreneurship. They have programs, teaching program, educational programs, maybe ABA. They have business incubators. They have a kind of a financial support, a social network, entrepreneurial network. They have the opportunity to meet with the entrepreneurs. They have the possibility for coaching. But the major issue is not this. It's not that we have practically lack of education, but it is the problem of how we teach entrepreneurial education. Because not always the courses, the methods, the skills, they respond to the demand, because the experts in the global monitoring, they mentioned that in principle, we have a more or less developed system of higher education in the field of teaching the education of entrepreneurship, but they are not striving to develop entrepreneurial skills. And thanks to Mr. Viktor Sedov and his Center of Entrepreneurship, 8 years ago, the dynamic model was launched in our country, and it is striving, it is intended to start education of entrepreneurship and to create a kind of a mindset, mentality, and to develop, to spread this mentality among teachers. And if we do not talk about different approaches towards entrepreneurship, we have all the opportunities to avoid copying the American experience or the European experience. Now they've started to develop a new approach, entrepreneurship as a method, as a methodology, because before it was considered as a process. You probably know this approach, and that it was possible to teach, to educate entrepreneurship, and then we could talk about business concept, about business model, to find financing, to create a team, to organize analysis, the feasibility. But now we have enormous opportunities to jump over and to avoid copying the Western models of education. We can make a step forward. We could be in the front. And first of all, we have to avoid teaching entrepreneurship. We have to avoid explaining what entrepreneurship is, but we have to use entrepreneurship as a method of education and to focus on the methodology. We have to talk about the unforeseen future. We cannot create business plans without understanding the future. And now, fortunately, we are within the frames of our dynamic activity. Thank you. As far as I understood, so we don't have to teach to create business plans, but we have to teach entrepreneurial thinking. Thank you very much. I think we've had very interesting speeches. And as far as you understand, it is difficult to tell everything, to tell about your vast experience within 7 or 5 minutes. But nevertheless, I think that even shortly they've managed to explain themselves. Vivek, I want
statements about this future that is really a very disruptive future. The world is changing so fast that what we used to have before, or students used to think about some stability, predictability, great management career in some city corporation or Lehman Brothers. It's no longer really working. Everything is changing so fast and so contradictory. So what is your advice? How we should change the way young people think about their future, and how better we should prepare them for that changing so rapidly world? What should we do? Is it some kind of experimental learning? I don't know. You have this experience working with 4 universities.
I'll tell you from my own experience. I'll tell you my experience with my own children. My son Tarun, he did a degree at George Washington University. I basically told him, look, Tarun, don't worry about making money right now. Don't worry about working right now. Take the chance and start a company. And he did that. He did that for 7 months, and then a bigger opportunity came along to get involved with the water project I talked about, where he could impact the lives of millions of people. So he says, Dad, I mean, I feel very bad about borrowing money from you, having to live. I said, Tarun, for me, it's like investing in a master's degree for you. Instead of doing a master's degree, you're getting a master's degree in real life, in experimenting with technology, in learning and doing good for the world. Just do it. So this is how I've done it with my own son, is I told him to become an entrepreneur, and for the next 2 or 3 years, I'll cover all of his costs, because the likelihood is that if he does, no matter what he starts, he'll fail. But what he'll learn in being an entrepreneur is going to be more valuable than any MBA he can do. It'll be life-changing. It'll set him up for the future. Even if he joins a big company later on, it doesn't matter. This is the time when he can experiment. He doesn't have any obligations, when he can learn and when he can grow. That's what you should be encouraging your children to do.
Thank you. So it seems to me that all of us believe that entrepreneurship can be taught, and one of the best ways is on-hands experience. And my next question goes to Yelena. What tools can be used in trying that experience? Is it some kind of business plan competitions or pitch elevator competitions or accelerators, incubators? What could be used?
Well, I really think there is, I mean, you basically list most of the tools that could be used.
You explain better.
Yeah, of course. I think it really, there is no like one, or a complex set of rules that could be used. I think you really need to decide on the ground what resources you have for the tools. I mean, for the students or for entrepreneurs, and then look, depending on the resources you have, what tool you should use. I mean, definitely accelerator programs work really well. But when we talk about accelerator programs, I think there is a really important factor of having a really good mentorship base involved into those accelerator programs. So it has to be a combination of theoretical knowledge about, not theoretical knowledge, but more like a frameworks that you can use to become successful in building a company, but then you have to actually talk to the people who are experienced, and then you go into the field and you collect the information from potential customers. So if I have to pick from all the tools one, I would definitely go for accelerator program, but as I said, it really depends on the local situation you have to pick one of the two. If you don't have a resource, there is no point, I mean.
Okay, thank you. There is a general belief, you're talking about accelerators. There are incubators, that companies that start in incubator, they stay there too long. And they are like spoiled by this comfortable environment. So I think accelerating programs are now more popular than incubators. Am I right?
I wouldn't dare to say incubators program are more popular than accelerator program. Are we talking about Russian market? Are we talking about US market?
That doesn't matter, US market. What is the trend?
Well, I think, you see, in incubator programs, and I hope Lawrence and José and Vivek correct me if I'm wrong, don't make it super comfortable, because you actually have, the model of incubator is very different in the US. You basically have to pay for being there, so it doesn't become really convenient or comfortable. So if your company doesn't become sustainable, you're out. I think in Russia, the excess of supply and number of federal support and local support makes it a little bit comfortable for entrepreneurs, yes. I actually been to Novosibirsk a month ago teaching in the school there, and I was amazed how much support they provide for entrepreneurs on the ground. And I think if you provide too much support and too much financial support, as Lawrence said, they're not focused on financial support, that could become too comfortable.
Okay, thank you. José, your new initiative that you are bringing to Skoltech, I believe, here, does it come with this on-hands experience where students will be experimenting? Can you tell a little bit more about this new project?
Yes, I'd be happy to. The Shirokova Institute of Science and Technology is a graduate research university. But it has innovation as a cross-theme. And in that context, students are obliged to take 3 classes as requirements for their master's degrees. And part of those classes are to not just learn out of case studies what is entrepreneurship and what are business models, but also to go out and practice. And in fact, in this specific case, we see an opportunity to innovate. So there are accelerator programs that exist already in Moscow. You heard of Lawrence's and the Moscow School of Management. Here, we've been thinking about a brand new context of allowing students to form companies within the university and to do so within an academically rigorous framework. So this is not to provide them support, but to provide them a learning experience to learn by doing. And we've been calling this innovation assistantships. Much like there can be teaching assistantships, there could be research assistantships. We believe innovation can and should be taught and recognized academically. So we're in the pilot phase of it. We're excited. We hope to be able to import aspects of it back to MIT. But that was very much what the initiative was to propose bold new manners of graduate education and research, and then be able to use this as a model elsewhere. If I might also add, when I think about disruption and this wave that has been hitting the world for almost two generations now, the biggest disruption going on right now is in education, right? And that is this notion that the concept of a lecture, you can just get on the internet. So you can find this kind of technical, almost vocational knowledge online. So that actually makes the value of a university education more important, because then in the classroom, you can focus on mastery learning, deep learning. You can focus on synthesis. You can focus on engagement skills. You can focus on things that teach students to be able to imagine what career they should have, as an example was just given by the panelists. And moreover, that this is a relationship that students now engage over their lifetime. This is not just for 4 years or 6 years. This is a relationship when students can come in and out. And in fact, I was on a discussion with someone from Google who was explaining very much about how they are looking at this specifically from a platform perspective to be able to enable that so that it could be available everywhere. So I just want to comment that this entrepreneurship wave that we seem to have, I think, in fact, is very much a consequence of the tech revolution. You know, I was in Silicon Valley in the 90s, and we were trying to grow our business, and our business was growing tremendously. We would make an offer to a software engineer, and if that person did not come in 1 week, we knew they would have another offer from someone else if we waited 2 weeks. And so we were starved for talent. And at that point in time, so many people were coming into tech that the matriculation at not just in what you would expect business schools, but in engineering schools and medical schools were going down because students were taking a leave of absence to go to a startup because they could achieve impact. They didn't have to wait 5 or 6 years. They could achieve impact. And I think that taught us a big lesson, which is that the model of educating and practicing has to change. And I think a lot of the programs we see are a consequence of that.
Thank you. The organizers requested us to talk about supply and demand in entrepreneurship education. And after your remarks about disruption and internet, I have a question again for Yelena. You have some kind of a blended program, a combination of online training and in-a-class training. Can you tell a little bit more about that? What may be the combination of hours, how it works, whether in the future the number of online hours will be more than in-a-class?
You're pushing us to make predictions, huh? No, we definitely believe that demand is extremely high, and as I said, we are really striving for sharing we knowledge, our supply, with the rest of the world. And in that sense, we developed a new program. It's basically a couple months old. It's one of the newest MIT initiatives, and it's Global Entrepreneurship Education Bridge. The program will be based on the course by Bill Alet as Director of Center of Entrepreneurship at MIT. 24 steps for entrepreneurship, and the course is called Who is Your Customer? We have 7,000 people who signed up for the course, for a general online version of the course. But what we want to do, we want just not to have an online version, but as Victor pointed out, a blended version of learning of it. So we're going to have a special pilot program, hopefully with Moscow. We're talking to Alexey Komisarov, Department of Entrepreneurship, about creating a course in Moscow where we have 6 weeks of online content, and then we have some local entrepreneurs who will be coaches, and I want to say coaches, not mentors, because we will be actually making focus on developing certain skills, not become like more of a mentorship guidance role. And after 6 weeks, the coaches will be working with the students on their projects and basically guiding them, while we at MIT will help coaches to become really effective at what they do. So that's the new course, and hopefully in the fall of 2014 we'll have it in Moscow.
Great. Galina, you run the Center for Entrepreneurship in your school. Can you tell us its role, and maybe you can compare it with Center for Entrepreneurship elsewhere, MIT as the center, and some centers really work for the entire school. And we'll move to that subject later. But is your center now achieving the goals you wanted, or it's in the future? So its role, and where are you going?
So I really believe that an entrepreneurship center has to attain 4 objectives. First, teaching entrepreneurship. That's first of all teaching at different levels. So we have entrepreneurship courses for all classes, the bachelor's, master's, and executive education levels, and some, specialized course for our postgraduates is in place. It should be an integrated program. We shouldn't just establish certain, courses and classes for entrepreneurship, just using American or European cases and models, but the entrepreneurship is in a certain context, and it depends on this context. So to develop our own curriculum, we generated a lot of cases, and mostly on the example of St. Petersburg, we also designed a lot of exercises, because all our curricula is based on some factual projects, for instance, for a high-tech company or for another type of a company. The second part, this is research. So we do a lot of research. We present the results at different international conferences in Russia and globally. The third element of the integrated program is support to our undergraduates. Here we are at the very beginning, and we managed, first of all, to set up the competition of business plans, and now we carry it out on an all-Russia unit. It included more than 220 projects. Within that, we had a lot of competitors, even from Finland. We drew a lot of sponsors to it, and the major part of these business plans were implemented, including business incubators. We haven't done too much so far. We have a lot to do here, and we need human resources. We are a small business school, and our faculty has other targets and objectives in the work. So we need to make up team, tend to involve postgraduate in it. So we need to. The most important dimension of our work is our impact on the community in St. Petersburg and across Russia. We participate in different conferences. We share our expertise and share our cases. We bring our, our educational content to other universities in Russia. We also involve the association of our postgraduates who are interested in the development of the undergraduates, their projects. So these are four major objectives or elements, of our work. So we started in 28, actually, and had to persuade our dean that we have the right to exist in the High School of Management. And we had to conceive him that the entrepreneurship is not just setting up a new business. It has a lot of contexts, and even including private life.
But we know that there are cases outside of Russia of much better progress where university can be called Entrepreneurship University. And as far as I remember, only Skoltech planned to be Entrepreneurship University. So Lawrence, you can tell us honestly now, because you left the school, what happened with this great plan. And this is a question to all speakers. What it really takes, what should be done for entrepreneurship to become like a leading theme or subject in a business school or university, how to make it that it is cross-campus discipline when people from engineering or historic or any other arts department are interested at least to get minor. And so what's your advice? I don't think we have a school like that in Russia, but your advice will be very useful to people in the room, as the majority are Russians. So Lawrence, first your story about what happened in Skoltech.
Well, I have only fond memories of Skoltech. I think it's a great business school. I think, but on the other hand, what we are doing now is an extension, and it's a way to grow entrepreneurship, but not only entrepreneurship. Also, entrepreneurship is one piece of the puzzle, right? You also have investors who sorely need education, business angels, VCs, and so on. And so we're launching a program that will be in parallel, a sister program called Venture Capital Academy. And there's a lot more that needs to go into this thing. I think one of the issues in terms of not only Skoltech faces, but many universities, is the traditional role of universities and how are they adapting to meet the 21st century demand of this boom in entrepreneurship. And to be honest, if you're beyond a university age, if you want to do a startup, and you actually understand that you lack, even if you're a corporate manager and you have a lot of business experience, you lack skills to be successful as a startup entrepreneur. Even in those cases, there aren't a lot of options for you to be better. And we talked a little bit about accelerators and why, this whole idea of when I created Startup Academy actually came out of this interaction that Skoltech had with MIT Sloan. And I was observing what Bill Owlett and his incredible team at MIT, really fantastic, were doing, and but also looking at what the other programs around in the world are and what would work in Russia. And it was clear that classroom-based, and I think it goes back to José's comments, really on target about online and how that's helping, not destroying universities, not cannibalizing universities, but allowing universities to move into a much better direction. And I think in the same way, universities really need to become more flexible in allowing entrepreneurship programs to run not only by professors and academicians, but to be run by real entrepreneurs. And that means doing more than just classroom. It means being much more flexible in your approach. It means helping them with contacts. It means helping them build soft skills. And in countries like Russia, many other countries where there are cultural things that it's not, look, go to Georgia in the U.S., right? My gosh, you wouldn't create a Silicon Valley there, would you, right? There are problems in the culture, right, that don't lend themselves to the things that you find in Silicon Valley, you think in the Cambridge ecosystem, and those soft things need to be accented as well, right? The transparency, the tolerance of failure, the high intellectual standards, ethics, all these things go into making this magical environment around Cambridge, in Silicon Valley, and so on, and other places to be so special. And those entrepreneurship programs really have to focus on giving that value add, which, by the way, accelerators don't provide.
Thank you, Lawrence. I am sure that MIT can be considered and is the entrepreneurial school through the entire school. And again, we were told that the main reason for that success is this entrepreneurship culture. Lena, any advice how to build this culture? Is it only to bring entrepreneurs to teach as well as academicians, or there are other secrets in building that culture?
It's hard to add. Lawrence just gives such a comprehensive review of all the success stories. Well, before I go to how to build an entrepreneurial culture, I want to comment on one thing you said, Victor, that about the progress. I really want to say that Russia is making an amazing progress in entrepreneurship, amazing progress. And you really have to be proud by yourself, really proud. And what you do in a couple of years, it's unbelievable. I think it's just our Russian trait. Everything has to be done very quickly. You have like 5 years to change the world and become the best in the world. It's just impossible to do it in a short term. But what you're doing is an amazing progress. So don't underestimate yourself. That's one thing I want to say. And then going to an advice, I think dealing with failure and mistake is really, really important, and it's a huge problem with Russian culture, how we accept failures. I think there is some progress there in that field too, looking at the Olympics and the closing Olympics, right? I think we are acknowledging that we can make mistakes, and we are fine with that. But I also think what makes us so powerful on the ground at MIT, we don't ask for permission. We ask for forgiveness, and I think that's the quality you should really incorporate. I don't know how yet, I'll think about it. If I come with a plan, I'll share it with all of you. But I think don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. Otherwise, if you will be always looking for approval from people, asking their permission, nothing will be accomplished. You will not progress. Just do it. Believe in yourself, do it, move on.
Thank you. José, Vivek, any advice from you how to make entrepreneurship the driving force of any university or business school, when structure, management, everything is really guided by the effort to make the school as entrepreneurship as possible?
The problem at universities is normally the professors, that they feel threatened by people who are smarter than them or more entrepreneurial. They get rewarded for publishing papers, not for starting companies. So what I tell universities is that it has to start with the system itself. They now have to change the incentive for academics, and maybe you can do that in Russia or other countries. In the United States, I don't see it happening, and that's why most universities are not entrepreneurial. There's billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars of research done in universities which doesn't go anywhere because the system is completely flawed. So if Russia could do something different, other countries could do something different, start with the incentives for the professors, reward them for the number of innovations that they or their students create, reward them for startup companies, reward them for thinking outside the box, not for publishing papers.
Thank you. José?
I find myself in complete agreement. At Skoltech, that is one of the founding principles, is to bring innovation not as an outcome, but as an input. And so the faculty promotion process recognizes not just patents, but recognizes innovation activity in terms of companies and the like. Your question before, how to build a university, in a way, it's a lot like building a company, right? It's about people, right? And there are 3 types of people, and if my experience is helpful here, there are students, clearly, there are faculty to teach, clearly, and then there are stakeholders. They're the people who either finance or who sit, are somehow motivating or promoting. And there are two mechanisms for if you want to use governance. One is the board that runs, or that the faculty and the administrators are accountable to, and then there's a curriculum. And that's the relationship, right? The board, in a sense, is the relationship between the stakeholders and the faculty, and the curriculum is the relationship between the faculty and its students. There's a lot of opportunity. And I think in the projects that I've seen internationally, there's a lot of attention paid to what are you going to teach that's different, without understanding that you're optimizing a system, not just one component. And so I think that Kaufman and a number of others have tried bringing light to the fact that this is a bigger issue. This is not just about changing the textbook. This is about changing an approach and also making more visible how this is. And I think the Shirokova experiment and the school is yielding results in terms of what we see by how the students feel and by what they're learning and what they're achieving while they're students.
Thank you, José. Now it's time to open floor for questions from participants, and please try to make a question short. You may introduce yourself and tell to whom this question is addressed. And I also allow, if we are short with questions from the audience, then our speakers can ask questions to each other. So please, I see one hand right there. I see already 5 hands, so 6. Okay, who has the microphone? Give microphone to at least somebody.
Добрый день. Меня зовут Сирота Елена.
Good afternoon, I'm Yelena Sirota. I'm director of the consulting group advisory. I'm the coordinator of a project and a successful entrepreneur in Rostov region. I've been working for 4 years in this area already. So we combine practice, events, academic activities, and we deal with 900 people each year in our system. Our project, while it's local, it is affiliated with Rostov region, and students of different universities and schools participate to it. So, well, it's this question to Vivek. So how, do you have an intention of the school where you work to cooperate and share your experience in the regions, to share it not only in Moscow, but to provincial Russia, to the universities which are outside of Moscow. So in Rostov, we have the Southern University, and we have a business school. And are you ready to come to us with your experience?
If you have any plans to work in the regions of the Russian Federation.
I wish I could. Life is just so busy that right now I can't even meet the commitments that I have. So if I can always come in via Skype. If you want to invite me to be on a Skype call with your students, I can always make half an hour or an hour, anytime on that one. All right, so the offer is open to you.
Anybody else to
Я
tell?
коротко скажу. У нас активно.
Just very briefly, our students actively participate in this project, and last year our students were awarded a prize in the area of entrepreneurship. Students from overall Russia come to us, and we are ready to cooperate. So certainly we do not constrain ourselves by Moscow. We work intensively with Novosibirsk, with Akademgorodok, and the pilot project I presented to you is also being discussed with Novosibirsk. Now I start my conversations with Tomsk and about the potential co-programs. So very interested in sharing our experience in regions. So, but Moscow is a kind of a great intersection for all information flow. So no, we cannot do everything, but we invite as many people as possible. So we do quite a lot of programs with regions, and we, including Rostov, and we prepare short programs for a few days. We also stage experiments where there online access to our programs. So we are moving toward regions.
Работает в вашем регионе и во многих других. Еще вопросы? Куда руки делись? Сюда вот принесите, пожалуйста, микрофон во второй ряд. Если можно, короткие вопросы.
If possible, please ask your question short. Make your question short. Could you tell us, you've said that the program of entrepreneurship lasts 4 years, 8 years, but what are the courses which are relevant for the entrepreneurs or for the managers? It's a question to all of you, probably to Galina. Well, of course, different skills. We're talking about different skills. You could talk about the entrepreneurship, about the methodology, like a methodology, not like a process, because process is guided, which could be guided. But if we talk about the methodology and about the approaches, the main competence, how to take the decision and how to act within the unforeseen reality, then probably I did not understand your question. I don't know. No, the interpreter cannot hear. What are the subjects? What are the disciplines that are required? First of all, it is the entrepreneurial mentality. There are lots of subjects. I think that we don't have time for debates, but the question related to different competences which should be provided to the managers or to the interpreters. In fact, this is a very good question, because what we know now about the startups and what makes difference between the startup and the manager who is educated in an MBA or a business school, he is taught how to become a better manager. What does it mean, a big company, a major company? A company, it's an organization, it's an institution, and they understand their business model. They understand how they sell, what they sell. They bring innovations, they bring amendments, but it doesn't work in general. Well, of course, there are some exceptions, but in general, it doesn't work because this structure was created for execution, for fulfillment. And that is why business schools, they teach how to become better managers. And the startup, the rules of the game of the startup differ from the rules of the game for the managers. And startup, it is a definition which was given by Steve Blank, a very famous person who made the startups like a world trend. And his definition of startup is a temporary organization which is looking for the repeated, the large-scale business models. And when startup finds this solution, then it starts growing. And that is why the skills which are needed for the startup, they're very specific. And for business guiding, I think it serves like an additional field. I think that you are not satisfied with an answer, but probably 20 years ago, Kurt Stevenson came to Harvard with his idea to teach entrepreneurship, and he was said, well, this is just a management. It's not an entrepreneurship. But in Nizhny Novgorod, they have a chair with the largest number of professors who teach entrepreneurship. But I think that Lawrence replied very well. Do you want to add anything? Yeah.
If they had come somewhere else in Cambridge, they might have gotten a different answer. But if I can make an observation to the question about teaching entrepreneurship, for me, the analogy that is most relevant is to medicine. In the U.S., you can go to medical school. 2 years you spend in classrooms. You learn disciplinary knowledge. But 2 years you spend in clinics practicing what you're learning. And so it's not surprising, therefore, right, that for entrepreneurship, what you're hearing on the panel here is the fact that there's courses, but there's also doing. And that doing can be incorporated into an academic framework. I think that would be possibly a way of looking at it. And this is happening in the U.S., and sometimes I worry, and specifically here in Russia, with the tradition of the university factory, where universities teach very specific to an industry, that the kind of broad learning that's required as foundation needs to be adapted in a culturally sensitive manner. But I worry that's a challenge.
Thank you, José. Еще вопросы, Василий Васильевич, пожалуйста.
Do we have other questions? Please provide microphone to the first row. Mr. Vysokov, a world-famous banker, and he's a promoter of entrepreneurship. Thank you. I'm a professor, I'm a banker, and for me, entrepreneurship education is the best criteria. If after this education a student will ask for a credit. If it doesn't happen, then I think the education failed, because none of the governmental systems is capable to provide necessary personnel. I wrote more than 10 textbooks for the students, for the bureaucrats, and for everybody, and I invested all my knowledge in the internet portal. More than 5,000 people visited my portal. Very many of them have undergone my course of education, and I received a number of applications for credit for 31 billion rubles. It's not bad. And we've prepared an English version of this business education, entrepreneurship education, and we are prepared for cooperation. What I should like to ask you, dear colleagues, when we say that you have to bring knowledge from your countries to Russia, I can tell you that we are ready to bring knowledge from Russia to other countries. I would like to ask for cooperation. We have time for 1 or 2 questions, and then we will finish our discussion. Can you hear me? Grigory Baov.
And I have a question to those who mentioned entrepreneurship culture in their speeches. A lot of speakers do so. Could you give us specific examples of this entrepreneurship culture? For example, we and I'm, as a co-founder of Club of Engineering Entrepreneurship, we try to promote this entrepreneurship culture at our university. Please give us specific examples of this entrepreneurship culture. Thank you.
Okay, who volunteers? Okay. I'll give you an example. The difference between Silicon Valley and everywhere else. So if you meet an entrepreneur from Moscow, you ask him what he does, he'll start looking around and then asking you, why do you want to know? Right? You ask an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, and he'll open up to you and start pouring his heart out. You ask someone about what do they do here, they'll tell you about what their current job is, and not tell you about anything they've ever done wrong. You talk to a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, they'll tell you what they do right now, then they tell you how many companies they've screwed up, all the failures that they've had. They're proud of failure. So those are two solid examples of cultural differences that you don't see in outside Silicon Valley. Right.
Thank you. José, can you add about entrepreneurship culture from MIT experience?
Well, I think resilience, and we're hopeful to teach a master class on resilience, and that's perseverance, right? There's a lot of failure in trying. You keep trying until you succeed, but you also have to be able to change tactic if it's not connecting. And so that's a balance of adaptation. And so that's very much a culture that we see in the US and in some places more than others, but that you don't see a lot elsewhere. But I actually believe that can be taught. I don't think that's intrinsic. I think this is a skill. You know, not everybody will be a brain surgeon or an orthopedic surgeon, but that doesn't mean you can't be a doctor and be productive and helpful to other people. And I think entrepreneurship is the same, if I can use that analogy. Does that answer your question? I mean, that is a criterion, but that's a very important one. And by the way, if you think about failure, there's the culture as it's practiced by the entrepreneur, but then there's the policy framework that the society incorporates. In places with history of British rule, the notion of dissolving a company under bankruptcy is straightforward so that the wisdom and the assets can be fertilizer for the next company. And that's an area of challenge, of policy challenge in Europe and in Russia, because we focus on the beginning, but this is a cycle, right? And there's not enough focus, in my opinion, on what you do to then transfer that wisdom to the next company and the next company.
Thank you, José. Excellent explanation. Last question, please.
Thank you. Hello? Hello? Thank you very much. My name is Arthur. Thank you very much for your interesting speeches. It was quite interesting and useful. So I have one short question. Don't you think that we should put emphasis on entrepreneurship education at schools? Not at universities, but at schools. Thank you.
My son is starting entrepreneurship and education in his curriculum in 3rd grade. In fact, in his school, which is an independent school, which has a fair number of MIT parents involved, not surprisingly, every year has a theme, and 3rd grade is innovation. And so he's currently writing ideas for patents. My wife is a lawyer, and she's asking my wife to file these patents, but it's I believe it could start, as Lauren said, in primary and secondary education.
Can I add to that? That's absolutely right, because at the high school level, kids are thinking about what they're going to do. It's where they're creating their attitude, their sort of impressions of themselves and who they want to be. And it's incredible. I mean, I teach a high school class in my children's school, and actually they help them win a prize in a business plan competition. And what I see teaching high school students is that some of them had no idea that entrepreneurship was even a career option. They thought they have to go work for Gazprom or get a work and become a chinovnik or something else. And when you open up their eyes and you see them change their whole world, that they can actually create a product or service, and they can become independent, they can become very successful, and they can change the world with an idea, with, in just a few, not that much in terms of resources. It's an entirely different mindset that can set fire to an entire generation.
I'd like to give a comment about that as well. Through Junior Achievement Program in Russia, I had a chance to judge several competitions for best business idea or business plan among school children. You cannot believe how creative they are. My question was, what happens with them when they go to Galina? And when they are ready to graduate, there is no passion, there is no vision, and they are still thinking about Gazprom and not what they were telling me before. So it's a challenge.
just one really quick thing. So, you know, in those of you from Armenia, from Yerevan, they have a great program called tumo.org, and it's the most amazing program I've ever seen. I mean, it's mind-blowing. It's an after-school program from 13 to 18, and these kids are in there. I mean, we go in, and there's these 15-year-old kids who are printing a 3D printer, right? And they're learning design, and they're learning art, and they're learning about entrepreneurship and innovation at the earliest ages. I mean, this is going to transform the whole country.
I didn't.
Thank you. It looks to me that I was bribed for another question by a smile. Am I right? You want a question? Okay, that's the last one. No more smiles.
Yes, hi. I'm from Iran, and I'm part of an NGO that's trying to jumpstart the startup in Iran. It's very interesting because a lot of people want to start startups and their own company, but they do it like they work on it at nights and weekends because they don't want to give up their day job. And I think it's because the propensity to take risks is a lot lower. And I was wondering if that's one thing you can teach as well, like taking risks. And is there a program anywhere in every school that focuses on that?
I am sure you're teaching risk-taking, so please explain.
So first of all, I think it's okay to do things nights and weekends to start, and that's, you know, in our case we do things on a part-time basis because a lot of people have an idea, but they're not really sure, they're not ready to quit their day job yet, and so that's normal. I don't think there's any problem with that. And it's not. I don't think it's true. Maybe there's some statistics that prove me wrong, but I don't think it's true that entrepreneurs are risk seekers. I think entrepreneurs are just as afraid of risk as everybody else. It's just that they're a little more tolerant to take them calculated risks. And so I think as the market develops, I mean, sure, you need to give people a push at some point, you know, and you can't be successful once you're ready to launch and still in your day job. But I think it's not as bad as it seems.
Thank you. We are done with questions. I would like to ask audience to applaud to our outstanding speakers. I think they did a great job today. So thank you to you, and I would like to thank you all. And before you leave, I would like one person to stand up, Alla Danilova. Alla Danilova, stand up, please. Alla Danilova, if you give to Alla your business card, I guarantee you that you are invited to day-long conference in November here in Moscow during Global Entrepreneurship Week. And we have much more time to discuss what we started today. So please, Alla Danilova, your cards to her, and we'll be happy to see you again. And thank you very much to all of you.